My husband and I took in my best friend and her 3 young children, and I'm regretting it. My best friend just recently lost her husband, home, car, and all income. Her husband suddenly passed and was the only one working while she stayed at home with her 1-year-old twins and 4-year-old. They had nowhere to go, so we took them in until she can save up enough to get an apartment. There was no life insurance. My husband isn't happy that they are here. He has told me that he does not like my friend at all, that she has taken me away from him and has taken his home away. He is paranoid that she is stealing our things when we aren't home and wants to put locks on our bedroom and office doors, as well as put cameras in them. Today, my friend went into our room to smoke a cigarette on our patio to take a second away from her kids when we weren't home. She called me to tell me that she was going onto our patio, and my husband started freaking out. Now he says he feels like he needs to get an apartment, that he doesn't feel safe. He doesn't have a place in our home that they don't have access to. It breaks my heart that he hates my friend so much when she hasn't done anything. She's just going through one of the toughest times in her life. But I don't know if I am being too trusting of my friend and inconsiderate of his feelings, or if he is being too paranoid. Now for a few comments. One commenter suggested that there needs to be a discussion of a timeline for when she is leaving. They mentioned that it's understandable for the husband to feel uncomfortable with another woman and 3 kids in the house, and setting a timeline might help. Another commenter warned that if I don't want to lose my husband, I better talk to my friend. They emphasized that it's important to maintain boundaries in a marital space and suggested allowing my husband to put up cameras and locks if it makes him feel better. They also questioned if my friend is actively looking for work and childcare arrangements. I responded that I agree she should not have gone into our bedroom while we weren't home, and that I need to reestablish these boundaries with her immediately. I have no problem with him putting the cameras and locks up if this makes him feel better, even though I will be talking with her. She is waiting to get approved for government daycare assistance, but is actively looking for work and daycare. She's only been with us for 1 month. The office door is always locked, and she has not gone in there at all, and she has not gone into our bedroom besides that one time, as far as I'm aware. Another commenter mentioned that if we're in the United States, the children would be eligible for Social Security benefits and encouraged applying for those. They also mentioned Medicaid health benefits. I replied that she has been applying for everything possible, and I will make sure she also has applied for these. She has been here for 1 month now and is getting government assistance for food and diapers. We have a stash of cigarettes we've been giving her because we don't smoke, and a common gift from my husband's family when they visit from overseas are cigarettes. I've known this woman for 15 years, and I wouldn't for a second think she would steal from us. There is no way for me to know 100% unless we put cameras up, which we will be doing. We already have cameras in the front yard, backyard, and living room. It's not that I'm not letting him. I did think it was just a bit excessive. We can put locks and cameras up. I disagree on this situation being her fault, but I 100% agree she needs to get her life together for her and the kids. But it takes more than 1 month to do that. Another commenter pointed out that my husband might be reaching his breaking point with all the stress, including our health issues and other problems. I responded that our home has not been a constant shelter, although I do need to be better at saying no to my friends in need. She is the second person to stay with us. The first friend was a disaster, and I won't make that mistake again. He was 100% on board with helping my current friend out. Her situation is heartbreaking, especially for her children. We did not want them to be homeless. There are a lot of details about their story that is just so sad. She has no bills, and she gets government assistance for food and diapers. Our room and the office are off limits, and I will be reestablishing these rules and boundaries today. She cannot and will not be allowed to do what she did again. I disagree that I am acting single. We both agreed to help a family in need. But it's hard, and I am realizing I need to be more firm with her. But I cannot read the mind of someone who tells me there is no problem until 1 month in. Then another commenter noted that the first friend was a disaster, which might be why my husband is so stressed now. They suggested that my track record created his anxiety. They also questioned if my friend has no family or other friends to help her out. I do know her very well, and you are absolutely right. The first friend was a disaster, and I did not know her well enough. I knew her for about 2 years, but obviously not well. It causes doubt about my judgment, and I 100,000% messed up on that. However, I wasn't the one to originally bring up taking in my current friend and her children. It was a joint decision, but it's a lot more than we expected. Now for a few comments. One commenter asked, "Where is her family?" ETA, by her family, I'm including her in-laws. To which I responded, "Unfortunately, they have not cared about her or her children during this entire situation." Now for the 16-day update. This update is a few weeks overdue, but a lot has happened. It's so hard to fit every single detail of a situation in one post, especially while trying to respect my friend's privacy while going through such a rough time. But I took a lot of your advice. I apologized to my husband and asked him what boundaries he has and what needs to change for him to feel more comfortable. We did have this conversation before they moved in, but things are so different than expected. I realized that I was putting my friend before my husband, and it was a harsh wake-up call. My husband wasn't thinking about leaving me, but he was definitely unhappy. I am glad we had this talk because we have been a lot happier being on the same page. Well, we sat down and talked to my friend, and it went great. She apologized for going into our bedroom when we weren't home and agreed that it was unacceptable and will not happen again. I told her the bedroom and study were off limits, no exceptions. Her children need to keep their toys in the playroom we made for them and not downstairs so they aren't taking over the entire house. She agreed to these things completely. We changed the door locks on the 2 rooms, as well as added cameras and a safe for valuables. Most importantly, we told her she needed to get a job and her children in daycare ASAP and gave her a hard deadline of April 1st. She took the whole conversation really well and said she needed this to happen so she could get out of her sadness and start building her life for her and her kids. 5 days later, she got a job and found a daycare for her children. It's been a complete switch in the energy in the house. My husband and I are spending more time alone in our home together, and all of our set boundaries have been respected. To everyone that said they'd never take in their friend and 3 kids, that is exactly why she has nowhere else to go. No one said yes. It's been rough on everyone, but my husband and I are confident in our decision to help, even more so now that we both feel listened to. He has also worked on his anger towards said friend and feels more at ease while talking to her and existing in the same space. It also helps that he sees she is taking our rules and deadlines seriously and acting accordingly. Reddit obliterated me, and while I don't agree with kicking her out, I appreciate the brutalness that made me realize I was not backing my husband the way I vowed to. Now for a few comments. One commenter said, "Congratulations on all around, you two handled it great. That was very kind and great thing you two did. Like you said, there's not many people who would do it. Me and my husband would. We have let family stay with us before. The key is always set rules and boundaries. It helps things go smoothly. I'm glad she found a job. It will help feel so much better. Getting out, meeting people, etc." Another commenter added, "This sounds like a near optimum outcome. Congratulations on getting through this without wrecking your marriage." Am I the idiot for checking my husband's phone and uncovering a nightmare? My husband pushed me when I asked him about a weird text he received and refused to show me his phone. I am unsure what to do now. My account has a large following, and my husband is one of my followers. I had to create a throwaway account to post this. I will keep it short and with few details as possible to avoid being identified. My husband and I have been married over 10 years. The last several years have been very difficult for us. We had been trying to conceive and failing, and this put a lot of stress on our marriage. I have been very vocal and public about our fertility struggles offline and online. After many rounds of IVF, I finally became pregnant, and I am currently in my 2nd trimester. From the beginning, the pregnancy has been really rough on me. I had severe morning sickness, high blood pressure, and my pregnancy was considered high risk. Our marriage has been under a lot of stress, and this is exacerbated by the fact that we haven't had intimacy once since I got pregnant, mostly because I feel completely shitty most days. Earlier today, my husband's phone kept pinging with notifications. I instinctively picked it up to see who it was messaging him. The messages were from a female friend of his. She is a relatively new friend. From what I briefly saw before he walked into the house, he had been taking out the garbage and snatched the phone from my hands. It seemed he had been complaining about me and our intimacy life to this friend. I confronted him and asked him to open the message so I could read what he'd been saying about me. He got really angry and pushed me hard when I tried to take the phone back from him, and I fell on the floor. He immediately apologized and helped me get back up, and I could tell he felt really bad. When I again tried to ask him about the message, he still wouldn't show me the phone, kept deflecting, saying it was nothing. He was just complaining to a friend that the pregnancy has been difficult, and that was all. I am not convinced. The texts that I saw briefly were more than what he was letting on. He refused to show me his phone for proof on the grounds of, "We need to have trust." I know he doesn't cross that way in this post, but he really is a good, loving, and supportive husband. He has never laid a hand on me, but I can't deny the uneasy feeling I have following his actions. Now for a few comments. One commenter said, "Ma'am, he was so worried about you seeing what he was saying that he pushed his high-risk pregnancy wife onto the floor. Please don't minimize this with, he's such an amazing, loving husband. He was willing to risk ending the life of your baby to prevent you from seeing those messages. Another commenter mentioned, he said it wasn't necessary for her to go for a checkup because she'd have to state what happened and police could be called. I honestly hope she can get rid of this jerk. Wow, this is terrible and pretty dangerous. Now for the 17-hour update. Here is an update to my previous post. I planned on going to the hospital for a checkup when he was out. He caught wind of my hospital visit plans and insisted he comes with me because he didn't want me going alone, saying he was worried about me and the baby. He was with me the entire time, so I couldn't say anything to the nurses or doctors. Baby is doing okay, but my blood pressure was high and I was recommended to go on bed rest. I am back at home now. He's been complaining and making remarks about how hard this pregnancy has been the entire time. It is incredibly frustrating to hear him complain, but after yesterday, I don't want to push his buttons, so I'm keeping quiet about all of it, the phone text included. When he left to the gym, I called my OBGYN's clinic and left a voicemail explaining the truth behind my fall today. I probably won't hear back until tomorrow at the earliest. Now for a few comments. One commenter said, I'm upset the ER didn't give you an opportunity to say you are suffering from DV. They usually make a way to talk to you alone, or they have sample cups which let you alert them. Another commenter added, yes, this. I've never been to an ER where they didn't insist on a private triage where they asked about my safety. It's pretty standard. Another person shared, many hospitals don't. I fell and hit my eye on the side of my dresser. I went to bed and an hour later, I had a huge headache. So, off to the ER, I went with my husband. Not a single nurse or doctor I saw did a DV triage, even with such a stereotypical injury and excuse. Now for the one-day update. I left, and I am safe. I just wanted to start off my post with that, because I know many of you are worried about my well-being. Trigger warning. If you have abuse trauma, please skip the first paragraph. After he went to sleep last night, I began gathering and packing essential documents as some of you suggested. Even though I thought I was moving quietly, he woke up and asked what I was doing. I told him I couldn't sleep, so I decided to pack essentials, as I thought it might be useful in case we ever needed to go to the hospital again for an emergency. He agreed it was a good idea, but then he started going through my bag and found my passport in there and flipped out. I tried to say I was being overly cautious and pack anything we might need, but he wasn't buying it. He started yelling, asking me if I was planning on leaving him. I said no. He called me a liar. I had never seen him so angry before. I turned and started to walk away when he got in my face, like I sometimes do to try and de-escalate. But he grabbed me by the hair and neck and pulled me. Somehow, I managed to get out of his grip and ran to the bathroom, closed the door, and locked it. He started banging on the door, telling me to come out, screaming obscenities and threats. He was kicking the door and trying to break it down. I didn't have my phone on me, so I couldn't call the police. The neighbors must have heard all the banging and screaming because I was told someone on the street called to report a disturbance. Eventually, the police arrived, arrested him, and took me to the hospital. I am at the hospital. I was admitted to be monitored for my blood pressure. Thankfully, my baby is okay. I have been visited by a social worker, hospital counselor, and my OBGYN, who got my voicemail and called to report it first thing this morning, only to find out I was at the hospital. I was informed I got a spot at a women's shelter and will be moved there when I am discharged, and a caseworker will be assigned to me. Thank you all for your messages of support, love, and kindness you've sent my way. My baby and I owe you our lives. Now for a few comments. One commenter said, I'm so sorry it's escalated to this. He is unhinged, and I'm so glad you were able to get away. Wishing you a speedy recovery. Minor update from me. My posts were deleted. I am typing this to explain the post's disappearance. For those who have been following my story and updates, I received a message from the mods saying I was banned for violating the community rules on the sub. I double-checked, and it seems I missed the rule on posting updates 48 hours apart at minimum. I think that's why I was banned. It is unfortunate that they are gone, as there was a lot of good advice in the comments, which could have been helpful to others in similar situations. Am I the idiot for calling the cops on my neighbor's boyfriend who locked her in her own home? I live in a semi-detached house that's been split into 2 flats. I live in the upstairs one, and my neighbor, an elderly woman in her mid-80s, lives in the downstairs one. We're sort of loose friends, acquaintances. I take her to bridge nights every so often, do her shopping, and she lets me use her garden when the weather's nicer, or lets me get some food shopping on her card, that kind of stuff. Every so often, I do a bit of baking and like to take her a bit, like a slice of cake. At the end of September, when I went downstairs, an older man came to the door. I'd never seen this bloke before. He was probably in his 60s, not middle-aged, but not her age, if you get what I mean, and dressed a bit weird in a blazer and tie. He was very aggressive and asked what I wanted. I said I was here to see my neighbor, and he said in this weird faux posh accent, Ms. XYZ is not taking visitors right now, but took the cake and slammed the door in my face. Really weird, but I assumed it was her son or something. I know she has kids, but they're not in the picture. Ever since then, things have gotten weird. I've only seen my neighbor twice, once when she was in the garden with him, and once being bundled off into a car very late at night before coming back in the early hours of the morning. Both times, she looked very uncomfortable. Over the last couple of weeks, I've noticed the curtains are always shut, and her garden is getting overgrown and untidy. Some nights, there's shouting. I can hear a male and female voice, but it's not hers. A few times, I've seen a Filipino woman coming to and from the property. Whenever I've encountered the man, when leaving the house more or less, or seen him leaving the property, he's either blanked me or gotten very aggressive when I try to speak to him. I once asked if my neighbor was okay, and he threatened to contact the neighborhood watch. I did contact the police on 101, and they were trying to fob me off, sort of implying, because it's an older bloke and not obviously related to county lines, they're not really interested. More or less got told it's probably just her boyfriend, and I should stop being nosy. I'm really concerned for my neighbor. So, is there any way I can get the police interested or maybe contact someone at the council? Thank you. Now for a few comments. The local Echo suggested trying adult social services at the local council, noting that even if there isn't enough evidence of a crime for the police to investigate, the way she is being isolated is a warning sign for elder abuse. Then OP replied, "Yeah, something feels very off about all this. I'll give them a call. Plus that MASH team, the other poster mentions. Thanks, mate." Prosody Speaks expressed gratitude, saying they are mostly a stay out of other people's business kind of person, but they are glad OP is looking out for the community. OP responded, "Thanks, pal. She's such a kind soul, and the moment I saw this weirdo at her door, all sorts of alarm bells were going off. Not something I can just let slip by, seeing as I don't even hear her voice anymore. It's weird as all hell." Ninuni commented that it's especially concerning if she's not ever mentioned a family member coming to stay or visit. OP replied, "Yeah, they all live down south, and I've never seen them visit. The last time was more them driving up to get her and take her down there, but that was 3 years ago. Now for the 7-day update. Hi there. You might remember this post I made the other week about my neighbor being cuckooed. The short answer is, she was, though probably not for the reasons any of us expected. Next day, I contacted the council's MASH team as advised, and they were extremely helpful. They were immediately concerned and said they'd be sending someone to check on her. They also asked if I could keep a diary of any events, as they'd like to speak to me when they do arrive, and I said I'll make a log of whatever happens. So the week goes by, and more weird stuff happens. It was all quiet, and then on Halloween, a group of older gentlemen came to the property, and then some women, who I assumed were strippers, showed up before leaving a few minutes later, screaming at the man who's in the flat. He kept threatening to report them to the NW and was waving around this insect spray. Anytime any trick-or-treaters came by, they'd get the same response. It was really weird. On Friday night, I saw my neighbor getting bundled into a minicab, and then she returned early hours of Sunday in a different minicab, with the old bloke screaming at the driver before he rushed her inside. Again, all really weird. Anyway, yesterday 2 social workers arrived and talked to me. I showed them everything I'd written, and they agreed this looks very much like cuckooing, but they weren't sure why this old bloke was doing it or what he was doing with the property. Now, I wasn't there for the initial confrontation, but I know they went down to speak to him, and he immediately went on the usual spiel. "I'm going to report you to the NW, get off my property, etc." When they weren't going, he sprayed them in the eyes with something and slammed the door shut. Police and ambulance were called, and I helped them wash their eyes out. From what I could hear when the police arrived, he tried the same thing with them, the spraying. Not the NW, but it sounded like they tackled him, and he got hauled away in cuffs. Police found my neighbor in the property, padlocked in the box room before she got taken to hospital. We did get into the property later, and for the most part, it was how it had been left. But every door, and I mean every door, had a padlock on it. I did speak to my neighbor in hospital, her kids are coming down, and she explained to me she met the man at her bridge club, where he claimed he was in the parachute regiment, but was now down on his luck and asked if he could stay with her for a night or two. Unfortunately, she agreed. Apparently, the first evening was fine, but the next day, the moment she goes into the toilet, he attaches a padlock to it and locks her in. That's when the abuse started. During the time he was living there, he apparently tried to take control of the flat and her bank accounts with the goal of chucking her out, and would get angry and scream at her when she didn't give in, but she refused to respond to him. She didn't really want to say much, but said he told people she was his cleaner, and the cars in the middle of the night were taxis taking her to hotels all across the region to try and get rid of her. I had to leave after that, but she said one day he had one of his little parties, and the flat was fine apart from the fact someone had smeared their mess on the wall. As for the bloke, no idea what happened, and we've had all the locks changed, though we suspect he'll attempt to return. One night, I heard someone try the handle to the front door. My neighbor's going to stay with my sister when she's discharged, and some of my bigger mates from Warhammer have offered to stay downstairs just in case. But we'll see. Thank you all for your assistance. You were all amazing. I showed her all the comments, and she was so blown away by the support, so a huge thank you from us both. Now for a few comments. ACNH Abatab said, "Well done for looking out for her. Very glad to read this update." Fentafanta3 commented, "Reporting social services to the neighborhood watch is a new one." Then Umbrella Jump added, "And the police. The bobbies crumble at the thought of the neighborhood watch."